Hey everyone, it's Mike Andes, and you're listening to the Business Bootcamp Podcast. Today we are going to be I'm going to be sharing what I feel I've learned over the past several years and how I've changed as an entrepreneur in the evolution of my career. So before we get into that, a big thank you to today's sponsor, Gusto. If you haven't already, go to gusto.com. That's gusto.com/bootcamp and try for 90 days. 90 days, you can try out their software and see if it works for you. What does it do? It does payroll, it does automatic transfer for your employees, and it keeps track of all their benefits. I promise you, over the next 2 months before the end of the year, you want to take advantage of this now, see how it works, and implement it in 2019 from the get. Check it out today. Go to gusto.com/bootcamp. Now, today, I'm not going to make a long episode, but I wanted to someone was interviewing me, and they asked me how I felt I have personally in my own career sort of learned or how have I evolved as an entrepreneur. And so I responded back to them, and I figure I want to kind of make an episode out of this as far as those of you who have listened for the past 3+ years now that I've been doing Business Bootcamp podcast, which is kind of mind-boggling, but it's been over 3 years now, and it's been 4 years here pretty soon, actually, I think. It's like a long time, and so I wanted to make this episode and just kind of relate what I had shared with the interviewer that was talking to me about what I've kind of changed, how I've changed my approach to business, and kind of the evolution of my career in entrepreneurship. So, number one thing I've learned, and for those of you who might not have listened for a long time, I'm involved in quite a bit of things, and in my mind, I'm really just at the start. It's just a very much of, the first inning of a long 9-inning game for me. However, I am involved in multiple different things. So I have Augusta Lawn Care Services, and we are just launching a new division of the company called Pro Labor Services, which does more like moving and handyman repairs. But Augusta Lawn Care Services is what I've done for the past four almost 5 years now. And that does landscaping and excavation and lawn care and mowing and all of that. So we have 2 locations that does the mowing and the landscaping, etc. So we just started Pro Labor Services. I own an Anytime Fitness location, franchise, so I'm a franchisee for them. And then also I have this podcast, Business Bootcamp Podcast, and then I also run landscapebusinesscourse.com, which is a course that teaches landscapers and aspiring entrepreneurs how to create a successful lawn care and landscaping business. So I have this podcast, I have that podcast for Landscape Business Course, then I have Barbells in Business, which is another podcast for the gym and helping gym owners make their gyms more efficient and more profitable. And so that's kind of all the things I'm up to, and all of those things have really been birthed in the past 5 years. So the question that I was asked and what I want to talk about today is really in the past 5 years, what has changed my approach to business, my approach to entrepreneurship. And the 3 things that kind of stood out to me, and when I was answering this question in the interview, the 3 things that I said just kind of off the cuff and raw are the 3 things I want to share today. Number 1, I've learned, and I guess not so much as learned, but it's become more of a reality that people come over profit. So people over profit would be the first thing that has really changed. Like when you get into entrepreneurship, when you're starting your business, even as a young kid, I was always running my own little business, doing side hustles, everything from delivering not newspapers. We did phone books, everything from phone books to I did actually had a snowboard and ski kind of shop where I would sharpen the edges and wax the boards and things like that. And just a variety of different things that we would do. We used to live on a golf course for a while, and I set up like a table and would sell sandwiches and go to the store and buy stuff in cases and then sell it one by one out on the golf course, and did that. So like just a whole bunch of different things that I would do to try to make money. And so when you start getting into business and things, it's just an evolution of that process of just making money. And so at first, especially you start to grow your business, for me, I was young and I was doing it to make money. I was doing it to raise money so that I could go to college and pay my way through college, which I was able to do via mowing yards. And so that happened. And then the problem is not the problem. Just like what happens is as you go down that road and you start your career and you start getting a little bit older, as I was out of my teenage years and into my 20s and stuff, like it has to become more than the money, because once you get the money and you're kind of like safe, quote unquote safe, and you're not like going to be out in the streets or without a home or like not being able to afford things. Once it gets beyond that level, there's got to be some other bigger purpose for you to continually strive for. And so for me at first, as usual, for a lot of people starting their own business, it's about the money. It's about, trying to make more than you could if you were working by the hour. And so that's how it started. But as I've gotten more and more involved in other things, as more and more the business has grown and become more successful, I really begin to value the people that I hire, the people that work for me, the people that work with me, and the team that I'm building. I value them much, much more than the profitability of the companies that I run. Not to say that I don't look at the numbers, not to say that I'm not always obsessed with the P&Ls and the quarterly reports and annuals. Like, I'm not discounting those things. I'm very much of a numbers person when it comes to those things, and I could spend hours looking over numbers and analyzing, figuring out certain things and within the business as far as efficiencies and ratios and all those things. Like, that's the MBA training that comes out in me, and I can do that. I can go down that vein and look at the numbers and things. So I'm not discounting the importance of knowing your numbers and making sure you are running a profitable business, because without a profitable business, you can't hire more people. And so you have to have the profitability. You have to have those solid numbers. You have to have good revenues in a growing organization. However, as that becomes I don't want to discount, I don't want to even take for granted the fact that the business that I'm running are profitable, or that, like, I'm not discounting that, I'm not taking it for granted. But once they cut to a certain place, for myself, it become much more important about the people that we're working with in that organization. And it also becomes very important to me about thinking long term, because in the short term, I'm okay. Like, I'm going to be able to eat. I have a roof over my head, and the businesses are safe financially. And so you really start to think long term. And when you start to think long term, you really do begin to think about your team. And so when I say people over profit, this is the deal. This is what some people get me wrong. Sometimes people think people, instead of people over profit, they think like I'm saying people are better than profit. Like, take people instead of the profitability of your company. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that you got to take people over profit in the short term, because in the long term, this whole game plays out. In other words, if you take the people that work for you and you create a team and you put people over profit, in the short term, yes, your profitability might be affected, but in the long term, I just so believe down at the core of my being that it is going to play out in the long term. Long term, the profitability of the company will be greatly enhanced by you, especially at the beginning, putting people over profit. And when I say that, people are like, well, that doesn't make sense. Well, this is the deal. Turnover is one of the biggest expenses people don't look at on their P&L. The cost of losing great employees because you didn't treat them right, or you didn't compensate them correctly, or you didn't invest time, energy, resources, training into those individuals. And so losing great talent is a massive cost. It doesn't show up in your P&L. It's hard to track, but that dollar amount, I guarantee you, is far beyond any sort of money you will invest back into the employees that work for you. So number one thing I've learned, and the thing I've really evolved to grow into as an entrepreneur, is people over profit. The second thing is, again, around people, and it really comes down to the fact that as you grow and scale your business, you can't do everything. Like even if there's things that you want to do, even things you think you're good at, there has to come a time when you realize that someone else doing 80% of as well a job as you is better than you doing the job. So I might be able to be really good at, say, marketing or sales over the phone or whatever it is, but eventually I have to let that thing go. Even if someone else is going to do 80 or 85% as well as me, I have to let that go, because if I don't, I will become the bottleneck within the organization. And so this is something we talk a lot about within our company, and we just had a meeting this past week with our office staff, and really talking about the growth of the company, what the bottlenecks are, how we can eliminate those. And so if you as the business owner become the only person that can answer the phone, or the only person that can do sales calls, or the only person that can manage a job, or the only person that has to talk to clients that are over X amount of dollars. Like, if you become the bottleneck within your company, it will absolutely stifle growth. It'll reduce the morale of the people that are reporting to you, and it will absolutely suffocate your company from growing to its full capacity. And so I really do believe in delegation, and really you have to accept the fact that people are going to make mistakes. Like, when you delegate to them, they're going to make mistakes. They're going to disappoint you. Like, just count on that. Do not expect your employees to do things as good as you as the owner. Maybe there are areas that they're better at certain areas than you. Maybe you're not a numbers person. Maybe you find a great CFO type person. Maybe they are really organized and you're not. So you make them a COO, more of an operational, hands in the business, day-to-day person, because you're kind of heads in the clouds. But whatever it is, but when it comes to a small business, especially when you're first starting out, you have 10, 20 people, you are really starting to having to let go of things that you are good at, and having to realize that they are not going to do as good a job as you. They are going to make mistakes. They are going to say the wrong thing to the client. They are going to perhaps not do what you would want them to do in every single scenario to perfectly optimize the running of the business. And you just have to come to grips with that's the facts of growing and scaling a team. Like, there's no great organization, no great movement in history that was ever completely in and of itself from beginning to end based upon one sole person. There might have been a leader, there might have been someone that really spearheaded a movement, but there was no movement without a large group of individuals. So you look at the Amazons and the Microsofts and all the companies that we look to in this day and age as far as great businesses, hundreds of thousands of employees. And the impact they've had on the world and the history and technology and our livelihood is phenomenal, but it took a massive amount of people to do that. And so if you're going to create a team that's going to do something special, you're going to have people on that team. And in order to have people, you're going to have to start delegating. You're going to have to start handing off the things that even you think you're the best at, even the things that you feel are your strong points, eventually you're going to have to hand off. And so that's a humbling thing to do. It's also a very nerve-wracking thing to do as a small business owner. When you are scaling the company, and even financially, you might be a little bit on thin ice, but you have to be able to delegate. You have to be able to do that even when it is nerve-wracking, even when as you're listening to someone on the phone, you're kind of curling your toes because you want them to say something differently, or you want to just pick up the phone and do it yourself, but you realize that if you do that, you're going to become a bottleneck within the organization. And so you have to allow them, you have to give them permission, and you have to give them the latitude, your employees, give them the latitude to make mistakes, go out and try things on their own, and realize that them doing an 8 out of a 10 is a whole lot better than you trying to do 10 out of 10 on everything within your business, because eventually that breaks apart, and eventually that plays out. So that's number two. Number two thing is I would delegate, and that's something that I have had to learn over the past several years. It's something I'm still trying to do. It's something that I've gotten better at, but have a whole lot more, much more I got to do better at. I tend to be slightly more inclined to be more of a micromanager, detail-oriented and like perfectionist, and so letting go of those sort of things is what I have had to do over the past several years. Third thing that I mentioned in this interview was really just because the question kind of came up about before we talked about how I've evolved as an entrepreneur. We were talking about time management and kind of how I have a lot of things that I do in different industries and in different locations and online, offline, and in everything from lawn care to the gym industry to podcasting and video down to mowing lawns and trimming trees. Like, it's so all over the place, right? And so many different moving parts and different things and different teams of people. Some people that are freelancers I've never seen before that work for me for the podcast and the course and things like that. I have landscaping crews that are labor type individuals and are, incredible workers. And then I have professionals, and then you got people that are trainers and things like that for the gym. So there's a whole bunch of different types of people, different things going on. And so they were asking about like time management and work-life balance and all of that. And so what I told them is the third thing I'm going to share today is for number one, I talk about people over profit. That's something I've evolved into in the past several years. Number two is delegating and realizing that someone else's 8 out of 10 is better than your 10 out of 10 doing everything within the business, because in order to grow, you have to delegate. Number three is that there's no such thing as time management. I really don't believe that there's any such thing as time management. I think it should be called priority management. The reason for this is because, I heard someone say one time that I don't want to manage time. Sorry. I don't want to do time management. I want to manage my time in a way that I dominate it. I don't want to just be managing it, and I definitely don't want time to be managing me. And so, as entrepreneurs, as business owners, we have the opportunity to really create our own schedule and do what we want with our time. And so I feel it's not time management, it's priority management. And that's how I look at my day, is I really try not to look at it in terms of blocks of time, but I try to look at what I need to be doing, and then I figure out what's the most important at this moment in time. What is the highest priority at this moment in time? Because in 10 minutes, my priorities might change. If one of my crew members gets hurt on the job, all of a sudden, everything else that was in my time schedule, my time management calendar, all of a sudden that's negated, because all of a sudden there's a new priority that just took rulership, and I have to address that thing because it's the most important thing to me. When I'm with my family, it doesn't really matter a whole lot as far as other priorities or other things that are important that are happening within the business. If I'm with my family, this is something I'm still working on, but that I have to prioritize that, and it's priority management. So I say, okay, family at this moment is number one, and in my mind, I kind of like take a block and slide it to the top. That is the most important thing at this moment in time. So that means phone needs to go on silent, focus on them, focus on the few minutes that we have together. That's the most important thing. That's priority management. It's not like, hey, I'm going to be here for an hour, that's all I got. It's just look, at this moment in time, they're priority number one, because they're not priority number one throughout the day many times. Throughout the day, there's other things I'm doing. I'm 100% working towards other business things in the gym and online, and then in landscape business course, and then at Augusta and the landscaping thing. So all these different things I'm doing, fighting fires, but then also prioritizing strategy and things like that within the company. And so when I do get with my family, for example, that becomes a different priority, a higher priority, the highest priority at that moment in time. On Sundays, my priorities completely change and switch much towards going to church and being with the family, being with my friends, getting more social time. That is family time. That's kind of my day of rest and the time I set aside for spirituality and the things that I do. And so that's my release there. And again, priorities change every day. Sundays, it's a completely different priority set. Throughout your career, priorities change. Throughout your relationships that you go through, married, single, etc., you are going to have priority changes. And so instead of time management, when it comes to all the things I do every single day, it's really about priority management. It's what's the most important thing right now, and can I get it done in the next, X amount of time, and then I just slot that in. So for instance, for myself, I use just the reminder app on my iPhone to keep track of all the things I need to do. And so that can range and usually anywhere from 5 to 20 things that need to be done. And then what I can do is throughout my day, every single time I have a split second, I'm able to scroll through that and see what I can knock out. What's the most important thing to knock out right away? What thing takes 2 minutes and just a quick phone call versus an hour or two or half a day. I just scroll through those. And I'm constantly in my mind kind of checking certain things off. I am adding to that list. So if I'm working out and I get a great idea, I just put it in the reminder app. If am in a meeting and I get an idea about something else, this is something I'm trying to do, is trying to focus more on the task at hand or who I'm talking to. But sometimes in meetings and things, I'll get an idea for a different part of the business or something I need to address or a reminder. That just goes in the reminder app, and so I can leave it alone and I can focus on what I'm doing right then and there. Priority management. I really try to prioritize the people in front of me, the meeting I'm in, the company that I'm currently working with, as far as the gym or the landscaping company or online. Whatever I'm trying to do, that's priority. But for me, I try to keep track with the reminder app, and then instead of blocking out time for those things, I'm constantly asking myself, what's the most important thing I can be doing right now? And so that's when it comes down to delegation, is what of those tasks can you delegate? And so that goes back to number 2, is what are the things that you can take off that list and have someone else do for you? And so that's kind of how I look at it. I do not believe there's time management. I don't believe that it's not something I think about. I'm not saying it doesn't affect anyone or it doesn't exist. But for me, I really think of my time as much more fluid in terms of priority. So it's not time management, it's priority management. What's most important to you, and what you do with your time is a really good reflection of what your priorities are. Let me say it again. What you do with your time is a really good reflection of where your priorities are at. Because if something is most important to you, if it's high priority, you're going to spend time on it. You're going to make sure some stuff happens. Like I said, if someone got injured on the job, all of a sudden they're high priority, and so they get my time. If your family is a priority to you, you will sacrifice certain things in business or time away from the office to be with them, because you're prioritizing them as you're managing your time in form of giving your priorities your time that you have. And so those are the 3 things that I've kind of evolved and changed the past probably 5 years as I've been to grow as an entrepreneur and in my career. Is number 1, people over profit every single day of the week. And I'm willing to take the short-term hit in profit to keep the people on my team satisfied and happy and on my team long-term, which in turn really does play out. And the profitability of your company does grow if you do put people over profit. Number 2, learning to delegate, learning to be able to hand things off to other individuals that you thought you were so good at, but having to let go of those things. I've had to learn how to do that. Third thing, with all the moving parts, the different businesses that I run, it's not managing time. It's not time management. It's priority management. Thinking in terms of what's the most important thing I need to be doing right this second, and then figuring out how I can lay aside number 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 to focus on number 1, do that, and then move on. Those are the 3 things I've changed, the 3 things I've had to learn, 3 ways I've evolved in the past few years in my career. Again, you've been listening to Mike Andes, that's me, on the Business Bootcamp Podcast. Until next time, be great, because nothing else pays.